Hey everybody, it's the Ultimate Rabbit here. My apologies, it's been a while since I've done one of my commentaries for a Homicide Life on the Street episode. Life keeps happening, if you know what I mean, and a lot has happened since that last commentary track. We lost the great Richard Belzer, and even more shockingly so, we lost Andre Brower, which really infuriated me. I thought that was a cruel theft, and especially considering that it happened just before Christmas. Not cool. So my heart goes out to his wife and their kids. And on the other hand, there's been a bit of a renaissance for Homicide recently. The show has finally made it to streaming on the Peacock network or Peacock app or whatever you want to call it. And of course, we have some new podcasts as well. Homicide Life on the Set, which is hosted by a couple of people who worked behind the scenes on Homicide. They've had some great interviews so far. And also, Reed Diamond and Kyle Secor have formed their own podcast called Homicide Life on Repeat, in which they go over the other episodes. All the episodes. They've been starting from season 1 and going on down from there. And they just recently posted an interview they did with Paul Attanasio, who is credited as the creator of Homicide. This is still up for debate, I guess. And also wrote the first episode of the show. Did a brilliant job. Brilliant writer. And so I haven't done this recently, and I think it was just time to sort of pick up the pace and get going, because plus the monetization on my YouTube channel is being threatened. So that's another great motivator. It's good to find a motivation to do things these days, because sometimes it can be too easy to feel completely unmotivated. But anyway, without further ado, we're going to start today with A Shot in the Dark. And I don't know if you have your streamer ready, or if you're doing like I am with the DVD. I'm going to go ahead and do that with the DVD. So if you guys got your DVD player, and if you haven't had it set up already, get it set up, and then we're going to do the countdown as we always do. Here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And here we go. It's interesting to come back to the show when it was in its infancy, and the color was all sort of drained out. Looks interesting, and everything definitely felt alive in a way shows didn't. That certainly is the case with this episode. Ralph Tabakin, Dr. Shiner. It's great to see it. I like this. It's one of the examples of people are trying to discuss one thing, but they discuss something else completely. This episode comes after Stanley Bolander, played by the late great Ned Beatty, had a date with Dr. Blythe, and he doesn't really want to talk about it. He's frustrated. Instead of mentioning why he's frustrated right away, he just gets frustrated, takes his frustrations out on John Munch. I mean, he's getting mad at him for reasons that really are unnecessary. And of course, these things we hear about Mitch, his partner Mitch, which we hear often. We don't get to meet Mitch until season 3, and when he was played by Tony LoBianco. But yeah. I mean, he's treating Munch like he's not on top of things, but he is. But when things don't go Bolander's way, he kind of just takes it out on Munch, and sometimes Munch invites it, but. Okay, so now we're going to come up here to the reveal of a witness. make sure it's right. And once again, the name goes up in red, and it's interesting. Duan's right above it. The case is still open. Go figure. I thought they had decided who would, if it was a murder or just natural causes, but we'll keep an eye on the board. We'll see if we can find out later. So what should I say here? Well, in some ways, this is kind of a Saint Elsewhere reunion because the episode is directed by Bruce Paltrow, who got Tom Fontana the job on Saint Elsewhere, and of course is the father of Gwyneth and Jake Paltrow. He has also left us. And then the story is written by Tom Fontana. The teleplay is by Jorge Zamacona. Yeah, I probably got that wrong. And the cinematography is done by Wayne Ewing, who did all the cinematography in the first season before leaving. Created by Paul Antonacio. No, didn't Barry Levinson and Tom Fontana create this show? Yeah. What other actors left us? The late great Yaphet Kotto, Clayton LeBoeuf. I mean, it's interesting seeing these two talk. Because obviously, they're trying to figure the other person out. And I kind of like the way it's written. I mean, this guy Sinta's being retired. I think if we haven't found already that he's been forced to retire, but everybody, I mean, I love the way Yaphet just looks at Clayton. He's like, come on, man, just be honest with me for once in your life. Be honest with me.
That doesn't surprise me. You're looking kind of tired, When's the last time you had a vacation?
Very condescending man. Okay, now we're returning to the Chris Thorman storyline with John Polito, Edie Falco, and Sean Whitesell. It's really good acting. That's the first thing I think I ever saw Edie Falco in. Yeah, he's great. I like Sean Whitesell here. He really sells it. He's a doctor. Such a shame he died so early. Considering how realistic this first season felt, it's a very scary moment watching Chris Thorman here. Is he gonna talk? Is he ever gonna recover in any way from this? I also mentioned Lee Tergesen is playing Chris Thorman here. Will later go on to do Oz. The one thing I gotta talk about, I really haven't thought about much, is John Polito, who was only in the first two seasons as Crissetti and who ended up exiting the series under he got very frustrated with Tom Fontana and Barry Levinson, but also apparently the execs at NBC wanted him gone because he was not a quote unquote attractive human being, which is stupid. And I look now and I'm like, I didn't give this guy enough credit. Polito, Reed Diamond on a recent podcast gushed about how big a fan he was of John Polito, and he really was one of the great character actors, probably one of the great unsung character actors, and he really just has a very natural rhythm, much like Clark Johnson has as Mildred Lewis, and he's really good here. It is a shame that he left the show the way he did. At the same time, it did give Clark Johnson an opening as Mildred Lewis, and his departure resulted in one of the most memorable episodes on this series. I always, Tom Fontana likes to add personal instances or personal attributes to the characters, and in this episode, Bayless has a cold, right? And I'm wondering if he's acting that or if he really did have a cold. And I guess it's quite possible he did. This is, I mean, a lot of shows you don't just really get a sick day from. And this is interesting here because Daniel Baldwin, another, I don't think I give him enough credit either. This is still probably the best thing he ever did, this side of John Carpenter's Vampires. And this is a great point because, Felton and Pembleton do not like one another. And their discussions threaten to reveal more about each person than they would like.
Tim, I think we should check this out.
Yeah, he's still convinced the Arbor did it. Yeah. Okay, I don't have the name of this actor here, but I looked over the episode on Wikipedia and IMDb, and a lot of the actors in this episode are residents of Baltimore, and they haven't appeared in too many things. A lot of them have appeared in various films written and directed by John Waters, the late great John Waters. So yeah, I mean, there really was a wealth of talent in Baltimore when they shot this show. Yeah, it's interesting watching Lisa Leo here too, because she has more makeup on. As the show went on, she decided that Kay Howard would not wear a lot of makeup. It was a good choice, an interesting choice. Long hours, bed tight. Jorge has a lot of great dialogue in this episode.
It's really suspect this is going to every single bit of evidence you have linking him to the crime. Well, that's the risk I'm willing to take in order to get the Arab down here. One piece of information I didn't give to the press was about the molestation.
He's setting up here, yeah. So basically, there's a lot of stuff that hasn't been leaked to the press that gives the detectives an edge. The detectives reveal too much, and the case could get ruined, and the suspect may just depart Baltimore or just get rid of the evidence.
Have you found the woman yet? She's at Central. They're short-handed. I'll send her over as soon as possible. Oh, now that's great. Meanwhile, the clock is tick-tocking. Maybe I should go over to Central and pick up myself.
Oh man, sexual frustration can really bring out the worst in a man.
Oh, hi. How are you? Yeah, just a second. That's Dr. Blythe. For you. What'd you do? Tell her I was here? Well, yeah, you are here, aren't you? I have to go to Central and pick up the woman.
I guess the date went very fast.
Hello, Dr. Blythe. Yeah, I had my glasses off, and when I put them back on, okay, I'll tell him. It's ready. What's setting? It's nice having you back at the old stomping ground. We're here to collect Alfred's.
This actor here, I wonder if he's the same one who appeared in the season 5 episode in which Chris Thorman came back. Alfred Smith. Moho Gentry is the actor who plays him. He's done work with John Waters.
A cop goes down. I think your business need a dip. I didn't want to get accidentally shot while resisting arrest. You on 38? 38's for cops and kids. We got a witness placing him to sing. No, you have a liar placing me at the scene. Hell, man, you got your mind made up already. Just take me out back, pop me, and dump me in the bay. Why don't we just get with it now, Alfred? We got a witness place you at the scene. Test come back positive for blood on your sneakers. Officer Thumb's blood. Okay. Yeah, I was there. But I didn't have nothing to do with blasting that cop door. All I did was lean over the body and take his money.
Great concern for the victim. Kind of hard when your own survival is very the first thing on your mind.
He's the one. He's the shooter. You seen
I like how these two actors play, especially I mean Cressetti here. John Polito is great because this is he could have played in a way with like over the top to where you're emoting and he's very natural because it's like yeah he wants this to be the guy but you know he's a cantankerous guy and he doesn't quite know when to rein it in.
this case, we don't lose this case. Steve, let me just get something straight with you right now. Now, I am the primary on this, like it or not. I understand where you at with Chris. I want to get the punk who shot him too. We got the punk who shot him right there. Maybe.
Like a lot of people say, these episodes are shot much like a play, and that's definitely the case there.
You don't believe what you see, do you?
Charles Flavin,
Can't tell where the blood is coming
played by Larry Hull.
from. No bullet hole. You never think we can be sick, do you? Nah, we all out there doing that hip hop thing. Mr. Flavor, let you do a lie detector test, please. Why? You know Albert Smith shot the cop? And you know I saw him shoot the cop. And I told you I testified if I'm not having a migraine. Otherwise, you out of luck. Because once I got into these cluster episodes, the world could be ending and I wouldn't have the energy to notice or care. Make a right up here on the freeway.
Okay, this is a great segment here between Felton and Pembleton.
Martin Luther King Boulevard. Just make a right way.
This is days before GPS.
Because I used to live on Fremont before they tore all the houses out to enlarge the
I love this because it's like on one hand it's like it's been named Martin Luther King Boulevard for a decade, but Felton is like, that's how I remember. Fremont is how I remember it, and I'm learning what you've learned over time. That's always tricky. So, and there's never really a definitive answer here if one cop here in this scene is more racist than the other, but you can see their points. Now, I don't think Felton. You can never really be sure, but I think in the end he's like, look, he's just very resentful of Pembleton.
And not everything on the damn planet is directed at you. Blowing everything out of proportion. The Union of Myanmar. What? The Union of Myanmar. What the hell is the Union of Myanmar? It is what Burma was.
And Pembleton would know that. He would know that above everybody. I mean, back then these episodes had multiple storylines, and that kept being the case until NBC came along and said, "Can you simplify this?" Not everybody's as bright as you, Fontana.
Father was at a community meeting. He was being pressured on Alina Watson. He told them that she was molested. Father did that? He told them about the metal pipe. Carol Flynn was there. They're going to run the story on the evening news. Screw this over. I mean, why should the murder even stay in Baltimore now, huh? Because if he's from Baltimore, he won't go. He'll talk about it, but he'll never leave. So, are you in agreement with the arrow?
All it takes is one little screw up to mess up a case.
So you're Joseph Cole's girlfriend?
His girlfriend? Yeah, his steady girl.
And you were in the apartment when Kaylar's law arrived.
I was in the bathroom.
So you didn't actually witness the shooting.
Well, no, I told you when I came out of the door, Joe was lying on top of his gun. Well, I don't know. I stood there. I guess I didn't
It's interesting. She's more or less witnessed a murder. Well, she said she found the guys on top of each other, and seems very nonchalant about it.
Shot Cole.
No, I didn't.
You do know. Tell me.
Not yet.
Not yet. Why?
If I tell you, you won't want to talk to me anymore. I'm hungry. Take me someplace to get something to eat.
A seductress.
So I'll eat fast.
Yes, Captain.
Oh, hey, this is a wonderfully cathartic moment here. Bayless does something that no one ever really gets to do, except for maybe Giardello in later episodes. He tells off Bondfather.
Fine. Fine. No, Captain. You do whatever the hell you want to do. Fine. If you listen to me, Frank, you could have been here an hour ago. Just drop it, okay?
Aixado.
The owner must be here.
oh, these dogs really don't. I think I've witnessed a few of these dogs when I've made deliveries. Orville. Very true. Yeah, it's hard to have a heart when you're a car salesman. This is Tim Caggiano. I probably screwed that up, but a Baltimore native. He's terrific here.
I'm not saying Smith didn't shoot Foreman. We have no weapon or physical evidence.
Danvers here. This is what we often see Ed Danvers doing. He said in a later episode, pilot playing people's advocate is playing devil's advocate, and he has to point out, that this case is not clear cut. At that there are certain mitigations going on here. Lawyers don't want to go in to a trial with a case they know they're going to lose.
Let's make a deal, old friend Alfred. Assault with intent to murder. We'll get 30 years. End up doing 7 or 8. No major point. You decide.
30 years, 7 or 8. Yeah, it's amazing how that works out.
Don't say a damn word, alright?
Some episodes like that are more theatrical. They but it's like it's just two people talking. It's just the way it's acted and directed is really well done.
Upset about Cole's death.
Is it just me or is it freezing in here?
Here we go.
You're very sweet.
Yeah, I'm a sweetie. Everybody says so.
Are you married?
No, not Munch. Munch wouldn't call you a sweetie.
How do I ask the questions, okay? Had you been dating Cole long?
About an hour. I'm a hooker. You shocked?
No. On my line of work, we deal a lot with prostitutes. I want to know who killed Cole, and I would like to know now.
Are you divorced? I bet you're just recently divorced.
Yeah, yeah.
You've got what we call in the business bedroom eyes. Still wearing your wedding ring. It's a dead giveaway.
I love it. Yeah, he's wearing his wedding ring, but you can tell. No, you're divorced. I can see it in your eyes.
He's a slimy little drug dealing toad. He's not worth as much conversation. But you're not a man to be flirted with or coddled. Sleep with me.
No.
Okay, order me a cook.
Waitress?
Look, Cole was killed by a guy named Newton Stewart. He lives over in Fells Point. I'll make a call. I'll get the address.
Hey. How you doing, boys? Steve. Hey.
When Homicide first aired, they aired a lot of these episodes out of order, so things got a little confusing.
Assistant State's Attorney. Thanks for the guy.
I almost forgot. That Lee Turkison had prepared as Chris Thorman in earlier episodes, and same guy, really nice guy, had a great future ahead of him, and this happens, and it seems brutally unfair, as life often is.
Every day. I'm blind. I hear you, Chris. Want to take care of it. See? It's serious, Orville. This is 82 Coupe de
Interesting. He's talking car prices when he should be investigating a murder.
Someplace else. Why wouldn't I buy it there? From what? Help me out here, will you? Mike's a serious guy. Not very well tempered either. Any other
Both true.
cars? I got a little lot on Paul's way, but okay, we'll follow you. Oh, wonderful. He shot cold, he wounded low, and
Caroline wants to talk to you ASAP. It's personal.
I'm gonna get us a car.
Tell her I couldn't find him. Only in Charm City.
What?
We're on the corner of Alciana and Ian.
Yeah.
Well, don't you think that's a tad excessive? He's the poor person that lives on this corner. Someone says, excuse me, where do you live? Alciana. Alciana. People go through life thinking this guy's a speech impediment.
You're venting.
Excuse me?
I love it. He says he's venting, but Bolander is kind of the one that's venting in some respects.
I got reasons.
I have reasons too. I have legitimate complaints and I'm going to talk to.
You got a banjo. Go bungee jumping. Just quit venting in my ear. Mike,
What?
you ever been with a hooker?
You ever meet my first wife?
They used to make love all the time. My ex and me, with her first marriage, you know. We do it in the bedroom, we do it in the shower, every room. Outside under two trees. We did it in the apse one time.
Sure.
The apse of our church. Was at the end of a clothing drive, you know.
That's interesting how
We did it once a week.
sexually active you can be, and to where it's like, oh, this place, that place. Some places you just almost want to risk getting caught in.
No,
Then what?
I don't know. It's. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. I think I.
Yeah. It's interesting. This is what cops do while they wait for a suspect.
Take your hands out of your pockets real slow, will you? Hands on your head. Underneath. That's good. Down. Look at me. Keep your eyes on me, okay? Keep your eyes on me. I'm your friend. Good, no, good.
Wondering when you come for me.
Let's get up real slow.
When it come for me, this is always a cop's wet dream. Getting a suspect that's more than willing to confess.
It's not black. It's African American.
What is that all of a sudden? African American. The name keeps changing. Negro. I can understand losing Negro. But black? What's wrong with
He shows some sensitivity. Felton saying, yeah, I understand why you would get rid of Negro,
I'm Nigerian.
But some of the stuff he's saying here is also kind of ridiculous.
So what should I do? Start calling myself a European American?
You can call yourself anything you want.
True.
African American is too vague. Using the name of the entire country.
Too fake.
A guy from Antarctica. What does he call himself? An Antarctic?
Antarctica was never made a slave. Second of all, the people of Antarctica didn't have their entire culture eradicated.
True.
What culture? They live on an ice cube.
You can't find the Lakers.
I like this conversation they have here with the car dealer.
Sure do want to find that Lincoln. No, we don't. You don't want to find it. That's right.
So where do we look?
For a car you don't want to find.
Yeah.
Follow me. Whoa. What are you, Polish American?
So you were up here because of the police officer who was shot, right?
That's right, Mr. President.
This is great. Although,
Going to the neighborhood, talking to people.
I was listening to Reed Diamond being interviewed on Homicide Life on the set, and he talked about how much he hated NYPD Blue. I think it's a really good show, but I agree with Reed when it comes to authenticity. This show, Homicide, has so much over NYPD Blue. I mean, the streets, the row houses, and the residents. I mean, it's all Baltimore. This is such a major character on this show.
What I know would mean anything.
Hey, that's all right. We're going here.
Well, there is this man who lives over on Fairmont in the same block across the street from where they say it happened. And I heard him say that very morning that he had shot a police officer, and he was acting sort of cocky about it.
Like bragging.
Yes, he was bragging. He has headaches. Oh,
Mm.
he has the worst
I'm surprised they didn't do that sting there, because as soon as she says that, you know who it is.
You happen to get a name?
It's not Alfred Smith, it's Charlie Flavin.
But I know his girlfriend's name. She lives over in the Murphy Homes high rise.
You got guys coming over here. Are they scoping out the scene, or are they trying to intimidate a witness, or are they just hanging out?
Who killed Joseph V. Cole?
Me.
Who wounded Kaylon Slow?
Newton Stewart is played by Richard Pelsman. Don't know much about him. I think he's a local actor. Probably like a lot of these actors. There's so many great actors they found on this show in Baltimore.
Mr. Cole's bodyguard. You shot your own boss? Mr. Cole told me if he ever got in trouble, no matter what, shoot. Don't wait for anything. Shoot.
Yeah, very literal-minded guy.
Mr. Lowe
Kind of reminds me of
wanted
myself, dare I say.
on some deal. Mr. Cole says he don't have the money.
Yes, in some ways, you could say this is an example of how crime makes you stupid, or it's just this is a guy who just doesn't think. He simply does the job he's been asked to do, and unfortunately, he does it a little too well.
When I started shooting, Mr. Lowe grabbed Mr. Cole to use as a kind of screen, as protection. I shot through Mr. Cole to get to Mr. Lowe.
You intentionally shot your own boss.
It's the only way I could kill Mr. Lowe. I was just doing what Mr. Cole said.
Mm.
Very commendable.
I love Munch's reaction there.
I don't want to be promoted because I'm an African American. I want the same chance of being promoted as everyone else because I work hard, because I do my job, and because I am the best.
You think people get things because they deserve them? How many times have you watched the Oscars and said,
These two are almost on. They are on different planes of existence in a sense.
deserves to fry, escapes the gas chamber because of some technicality? Nothing's based on merit. The more you think you deserve, the less you get. That's the way this world is.
If you actually believe that, though, how do you get out of bed every morning?
Well, they both have a point, you know. I mean, yeah.
Where next?
There's another lot out in Rosedale. The car probably isn't there. And since it's cold and it's late, and you don't want to find it anyway, I'll lead the way.
You know, I'm beginning to think this is a complete waste of time. I say we go get Ferguson and we bring him into question one more lot. But it's all the way in Rosedale.
I don't care if it's on the moon.
It's that important to you.
What?
I love he says that. Don't care if it's on the moon. Because that's Pembleton. He is as thorough as they come.
Lying to you so you can prove to everyone that Bayless is a hunk.
I listened to you all night, philosophize and criticize. You think you got me pegged? You think you got me all figured out? You think I think like you think? I don't give a damn about Bayless. I don't give a damn about you. All I want to do is find a man that butchered an 11-year-old girl. If you don't want to do that, go home.
Amazing delivery by Brower. I mean, he just says, look, this is why I'm here. That's the only reason I'm here. You can either work with me or just get out of my face.
That's also a solution. Captain Marfall, what you been up so late? Not a uniform. I talked to you.
Okay, what's she humming there? Is that the Imperial March from Empire Strikes Back? That's what it reminds me of.
Detective Crusette. Yeah.
It's Lily Bowl guy.
Hey,
It's Charlie Flavin's girlfriend. She was there tonight. Chris got shot.
Yeah, just that little gesture from Charles Flavin. Yeah, it's believable that he has migraines.
I don't have it.
He doesn't have to overdo it. He doesn't have to my head. Well, he kind of does that later, but anyway.
Any dogs here?
At this point, Pendleton and Felton are not bickering at one another, which is nice. They're both finally on the same page.
Let me have a look on Malachi get the luggage. Thank you.
What's lithium malachite?
The test solution we use. You put it on a stain. If it turns blue, it's dried up blood. If it turns gray, it's not. Five, two, three, L, N,
Finally! They found a car that did not want to be ever so easily found.
Yeah. Bingo. Take this one.
Like the music, like how quiet it gets here.
Nothing.
This is one of my favorite moments in this show. I mean, I don't blame Bayless for being frustrated in the slightest.
It was stupid. It created a serious problem. Knowing that I could solve problems, given the outcall of contents and recipients, you now have two choices. One, resign from the Dina Watson case. Two, go into my office and apologize to Bonaparte. No way. No way, sir. I am the primary here. No matter who gets involved in this case, no matter
He's absolutely right. Bayless is absolutely right in everything he says here.
if he damaged the investigation, he's the one who should be apologizing to me and Medina Watson's family. Everything you say is true, Tim. Unfortunately, what's right doesn't matter. You and I have two choices: your truth or your job.
I love Koto's delivery there because it's just like, yeah, look, you're right. It doesn't matter. That's what really sucks. It sucks that it doesn't matter, but you have a job to do, and if you want to keep doing it, apologize to Barnfather. And of course, he doesn't want to do it, but he does.
The first time is the hardest.
Yeah, he's always been doing that. First time. He's way past the first time, Giardello.
Franco was born a dog for his wife and kid, though.
Yeah, that's interesting. In this episode, they said he's a wife and a kid, and it becomes clear that he does have a wife, but yeah, he doesn't really have a kid until. Reminds me of this interview that Andre Brower did with Terry Gross on Fresh Air. He's talked about, writers often change their mind. One week I have kids, the next week I don't have kids. And she's like, well, what happens in a transition like that? Suddenly I don't have kids. Suddenly it's just me and my wife.
Stare at the same photos. I look at the same office reports. Every day I wanted to.
I keep thinking, did he really have a cold in this episode, Kyle Secor, or did he just did a really good job of portraying someone who was under the weather?
I've covered every fresh lead, every prank phone.
I mean, he looks clearly exhausted as, he should be considering the amount of time he's put into this case.
I pretty much made a mess out of this case. So I think that the best thing that I could do is to step aside and let Pendleton take over before any more time is wasted here. This is what's going to happen next. And I mean right now. You go home. You go bang the Sandman.
I like that. Bang the Sandman.
If you want to come to me and bitch and moan about what I have to have copy or I'm going to listen. Okay? Okay.
Pivotal and infuriating moment here.
Your girlfriend Lillian just gave you up. She says that you and her were walking along Fairwood from Adam Road in there. Officer Porter pulls up and he talks to you and you kind of bad attitude. I had a headache. And Thorne there tells you to certain position, and you pull out a nightstick. Foreman goes to grab your arm, and you pull out his revolver. I capped him twice, point blank.
Doesn't care.
I hope spending you in jail for every day of my friend's part.
My head hurts.
He doesn't care. It's amazing how much story these writers could pack into a single episode. There's a number of plot threads here, and maybe they didn't register for me when I first watched the show, but here everything just seems to work perfectly. I mean, not everything is solved, not everything is closed, so to speak, but
Like heaven here on earth.
up. Wendy Hughes returning as Dr. Blythe. Finally getting sick and tired of. How nice of her to say that to Munch instead of Bolander saying, get out of here, Munch.
We call it the aquarium. It's not particularly private, but it's quiet. Is this okay?
Yeah.
Oh, Munch is still watching. Come on, man.
Stanley, I had a wonderful time the other night.
I'm glad you did. Are you sure?
Yes, a wonderful time.
Are you sure you want to
See a lot of extras who've been on the show from time to time, and it's fun watching. It's like you want to make sure your partner
And why haven't I heard from
had
you
it best in that she was authentic in her moaning, I guess. And I guess, man, you don't always know if they do,
since? Just tell me what's
I mean, Meg Ryan made a case of how easily orgasms can be faked in When Harry Met Sally. There's no changing that. Like, Sector is like, okay, I'll leave. She has no lines, but I just love her reaction there. It's like, okay, I'm just going to go over here.
afterwards?
Looking back, I mean, Ned Beatty played Bolander is, in a lot of ways, on one hand, not the easiest guy to get along with, but he had a lot of sweetness in this season. And we got to see some of that in season 2 as the show went on. He was a little more cantankerous than anything else. And understandably so.
Stanley, I like you and respect you too much to lie to you. It wasn't the best ever.
I know it.
But that doesn't mean that tonight it won't be.
So it wasn't bad. And just like, hey, maybe you didn't get it right this time, but get it right tomorrow.
Here's to Lewis and Cressetti for bringing Crystal.
I like this. Justice has been served when it comes to one of their own being taken down.
Take care. I appreciate your taking problems with me tonight. It shows team spirit was sometimes lacking with this unit. Yes, we come over viewers.
Frank never drinks unless
That's right. This is another episode where he doesn't drink with the regular cops, the regular detectives, I should say.
Chief, you think I'm a racist? I think you're overly opinionated, totally self-centered, and slightly misogynist. But a racist? No, you're not a racist. Can you think I'm misogynistic?
Yeah. Always kind of gay Howard to straighten Bo out when he's just crazy. It's nice going to a bar where they give you free drinks, or at least someone buys them for you.
Onion ring, sauerkraut, and applesauce.
so.
So, applesauce is not a vegetable. Applesauce comes from apples. Apples are not vegetables.
True. Apple's not a vegetable.
Yeah, right. And look at this. Under entrees, it says vegetable platter. If I order that, do I get onion ring, sauerkraut, and applesauce? Special today? It's always the same. It never changes. Can't we find another It's an expression like man with an arrow. It's like saying I love you to your wife. It becomes meaningless.
Well, if I ever get married, I hope that doesn't prove to be the case.
But in actuality, it doesn't change. Get that?
Yeah. Kind of like homicide.
more things change, the more they stay the same. It's another way of looking at it.
Hello, Baltimore. Yes. Please stay. Hold on, applause to the end. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Rufus Bond, and I'd like to introduce you to a little thing that I like to call karaoke.
Ah, karaoke.
Souvenir puns. I put it with Nirvana on the jukebox. But karaoke.
What's wrong with Nirvana on the jukebox, Munch? The actor there, Rufus Bond, is David DuBois. Don't really know a lot about him. He's probably another Baltimore local. Well, let's take a look really quick. Oh, he's been in a lot of stuff. House of Cards, Veep. I guess he's still working. All right. Or maybe he's just one of those actors who just sinks himself so deep into a part that you don't recognize him in other stuff right away. It's a great one between Bayless and Pendleton.
I managed to track down the lab report on being a scourge. They ID'd the black smudges.
Yeah, it's
From the Harper's bar.
I love it just focuses on Pendleton's face and not Secor's. I mean, in a lot of scenes I mentioned, they would go back and forth.
wow, damn.
I guess they didn't really need to because Secor, so you could feel his elation that, oh my god, he was right. And it's just great seeing Pendleton just like being happy for him, which you didn't expect. He's like, yeah, you were right. Yeah, let's go make an arrest. And now we come to a special scene with Polito and Johnson. I mean, Polito in this scene, again, I never gave this guy enough credit. Shame on me. Shame on me. On one hand, Chris said he's not the easiest guy to get along with, but he's a good cop. He's thorough and he, you know, I think in this moment he slowly starts to realize that he could have lost this case if he wasn't careful.
Never had a mark. They made sure all of those cases were closed. Nothing was up. Never had a case. Oh, my grandfather, he was like a real buster. He was like a goomba. You know, he's all this family tradition.
Love learning about his family here, that they're all kind of cops, or at least, you know, came from a tough tradition.
I mean, my ex-wife was crying. I'm sure just because she was aware she wasn't really getting along. But I remember one time looking up from the hospital bed, my grandfather was in there with me, and he was crying. I thought, so my father.
Yeah, fathers, grandfathers, making them cry. It's a horrible feeling.
Dead. I made the worst mistake ever. I was a detective should not get emotionally involved in a case. It's like the basic.
Yeah, exactly. You want to follow that role. You're not getting emotionally involved, but hey, but Lewis makes it very clear. Right? We're not perfect. The raw frat. And this is. I remember watching this first time and just laughing my ass off. Here Munch is just like, oh, no karaoke, no way. It's like having Nirvana in the jukebox. But instead, he's here singing Mac the Knife and not doing a very good job, but he's still hilarious. I think this is kind of the first time I really got to see him do anything kind of resembling stand-up comedy. My parents bought me a book called How to Be a Stand-Up Comedian, which was written by Belzer, and that was the first time I really got to know who he was. So seeing him here was fun. I love that. I just love the atmosphere here. Like I said, this show has authenticity down to a T, as opposed to NYPD Blue, where a lot of it's shot in LA, even though it takes place in New York. And yeah. It's great. As dark as this show gets, and every once in a while it does have a great sense of humor about it. And there we go, A Shot in the Dark. I wonder if the title was inspired by the movie of the same name, directed by Blake Edwards, written by William Peter Blatty, and starring Peter Sellers as Inspector Clouseau. Don't know. Doesn't really matter. Anyway, thanks for joining me on another Homicide commentary. I hope it was somewhat informative. And after next up, we got 3 Men and Adina, which is arguably still the greatest episode of this show, and so simple in its design. So thanks for joining me, and I will talk to you later. Take care, guys.